Welcome to Old Guy Tech,
the OGT.TV recording studio.
Technology for the rest of us.
Hi, I'm Rob Charney, Old Guy Tech TV News 44, and today we have the honor of having Jack Uppal, who's running for Congress in District 4, with us today. And we're going to talk a little bit about how campaigning works, how it's going for him, his philosophy, and just some ideas. So, Jack, thank you very much for coming and spending some time with us. I really, really appreciate it. I know you got a busy schedule. You're all over the place right now, and we had some fun together at the Diamond Springs Bazaar.
Yes,
that was
did.
neat. That was a great time.
Yeah, we
Super.
did.
Yeah, so it was really good.
It's a pleasure to be here. I've seen some of your other interviews, and I think this is just a marvelous place you've got over here.
Well, thank you very much. We're really trying hard. We really are. And we appreciate the comment. So thank you very much. So why don't we talk a little bit about why you decided to run and your philosophy of being a congressperson and why it is that you wanted to do it, and just a little bit about yourself, family life, whatever. So we'll just start in with that type of thing.
Sure. Well, let me start out by saying, Rob, that I've worked for 28 years before I retired. I've never been in politics in my life. I know that some people are suspicious about politicians and stuff, and so let me get that out there right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Politics is not something I've ever done before. But I got into this late last year after seeing all of the difficulty that our people were having because our Congress just wouldn't act. They wouldn't do anything. Jobs aren't being created at the pace that they should be created. My daughter just graduated from college this June. Real proud of her.
Right.
She got
Good
her
job.
degree in biology, which is a great degree to have. But she's also working to find a job.
Sure.
The jobs just aren't available. So the reason I got into this is seeing all the inaction that happened in Congress last year, and the idea that our people are hurting as a result of people just not working together. And the main problem I saw in Congress last year is the congressmen wouldn't work together. They decided to just sit back on their ideology and not do anything, not solve the real problems, not do the work that we sent people to Congress to do.
Right. Right.
That got me into this race. Now, my background is real simple. I came to this country when I was a small little kid.
Yeah.
Came from India. I was born in India. I came here when I was 7 years old. I tell the story of how the first day of school, my father took me to enroll in school, and the principal asked my father what my name was. And my name, my father replied, is Bhupinder Singh Uppal. And the principal looked at my father a little funny, and he said, does he have a nickname that kids can pronounce? You got to understand, I didn't speak a word of English
at
that time. So my father turned to me and asked me to pick an American name for myself. So here I had this tremendous choice. I could pick any name I wanted. The only thing I knew in English was Jack and Jill.
Ah.
So I ended up with the name Jack.
Oh, good.
Jill was taken, so I ended up with Jack.
That's funny.
And I've been Jack ever since. I changed it to Jack legally when I became a citizen.
Sure.
At age 18.
Sure.
My father was a grad student when I came over, so he just had a small stipend. We moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota from India.
Of all places.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Wow, yeah.
Moving there in September. I still have a picture of myself in January of the following year, all bundled up in a snowsuit.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a whole lot of income because my father was just a student. My mother, she did babysitting and stuff when Emily came over. We lived in a Quonset hut in Minneapolis. But we made it. My father got his PhD in economics. He went on to be a professor of economics.
Wow.
Michigan State, and then eventually State University of New York.
Incredible.
I got to go through schools, went through the public high schools, then I got my bachelor's degree in Albany, and then I got my PhD in chemistry from MIT. And after that, I decided, I want to work in something new for chemists. So I worked in the semiconductor industry starting in 1980. And I worked in that for 28 years.
Wow.
And it was a marvelous time. That was the time that the internet really came into being.
Started growing.
That's when the whole industry really took off. And the thing that happened, I realized when I started working that what was going on is all the tools we were using in the semiconductor industry, they came out of the space program in the 1960s.
Right, yeah.
And it was an eye-opener of how a program like that, which was supposedly to send a person to the moon, was about so much more than that.
Right.
It
right.
enabled all of the technology, all of the inventions that propelled us for the next 30, 40 years.
You know, I know that a lot of the things that we take for granted, microwave ovens, I mean, we can go on, all came out of the space program.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Your cordless drills came out of a
Yeah.
collaboration with Black & Decker.
Yeah.
Because NASA wanted a way to drill for soil samples on the moon. And so now it's still a thriving industry today.
Absolutely.
That's the kind of programs that I want to see.
Yeah.
I think that's what we need in this country to move ahead. So I actually have some ideas on that.
Really?
It's not a space program so much.
It's not? I'd like to go to space.
I'd like to go to space too. And I think we
kidding.
need to do more in space. But the thing that I think we need today is I want to see a national program centered around developing an electric car with a range of 300 miles, no less, 300 miles, seating a family of 4, and costing under $30,000.
That would be wonderful.
It would be wonderful.
Yeah,
It's not
it would be.
possible today.
Right.
What it takes is it's going to take some battery technology,
Right.
and some new materials, but that's the kind of a goal that I'd like to see for this country. It's going to create jobs.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to create industries. It's perfectly in line with the direction that I'm hearing the presidential candidates talk about, of moving forward with this country.
Right.
That's what we need. That's what's been missing in our country for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. Well, it's a good plan. I have a little electric car. I'll show you it afterwards. I don't know. You saw it at the parade, I think.
Yeah.
You know, we got a little, and it's kind of neat, but it's only 40 miles radius. You know, it's all we can go, and it's just, but it's fun for running around town. But I'm totally with you on electric. I really like that.
The problem with the 40-mile range is that people will get range anxiety.
Yep.
If they've got a long commute to work,
Yep.
they're always worried. The reason I picked 300 miles is that's about a tank full of gas
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of cars.
Right.
At 300 miles, people are pretty secure that, they're going to be able to get back home and they can charge it overnight and everything is fine. So
Yeah. I think that's a good goal. Yeah, absolutely. I'm all for it. And I don't want to make this about me, it's more about you, but I sat on the El Dorado County Transportation Commission for a number of years, and when the first Honda first came out with the first electric cars, I was chairman that year, and they let me have the car for a month. What a great car that was.
Yeah.
But the sad point is they took all those cars back and destroyed them.
Yeah.
And it was like, I would have bought the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that great, but they didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So.
But I think that trend is coming back. You're going to see
Yeah.
more and more of those in the future.
Yeah.
That's just one of the programs I can see to kind of move our country forward again. You know, some people think that there's nothing that government can actually do to help create jobs in the private industry. Well, look, we just talked about the space program. We talked about this thing for electric cars.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things that we can do. If we've got the will to do it, and we've got a desire to actually work together to get these things going, we can do that. This is an example of something we used to do a lot of, and that is joint programs between government and industry.
Right.
Those programs really work. Government isn't dictating exactly what industry is going to do. Who's going to make these cars at the end? It's not going to be the government. It's going to be the General Motors and the Chryslers and so on.
Right.
But what you do is you give them all the tools to build it. You know, you develop the battery technologies, which is incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
And and will it help only automobiles? No, you get that battery technology. It can go into so many other things too.
It could, but that is the one area that's lagging behind is battery technology.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I've read quite a bit on it, and we're going to have some kind of major breakthrough.
We've got
happening.
a lot of efforts going on in battery technology already, but there's nothing that's concerted that's trying to bring together battery technology and electric automobiles and everything in one piece to give a solution that this country would really benefit from a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great idea. So that's your idea on stimulating the economy, is making sure that we have more jobs going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That would create a lot of jobs. The only problem is it's going to take a while.
Right.
You know, those kinds of programs are fantastic in jobs, but they take time.
You can't do it overnight.
You can't do it overnight.
Yeah.
So short term, you have to do something else.
Yeah.
The only things you can do short term are what we call infrastructure jobs. It's more than roads and bridges, though. You know, that's what people think of when they hear infrastructure.
Sure.
We live here in El Dorado County. I live in Placer County. It's a huge district. This congressional district spans 10 counties, from Truckee in Nevada County
Right.
all the way down to the mountains and foothills of Fresno County.
Wow.
And one of the problems we have in this county is high-speed internet.
Yes.
And even right
Yes.
here in El Dorado County,
Yes. Yes.
there's a lot of people that don't have access to it.
Dial-up is still prevalent in these
Dial-up
areas,
is still
which is
prevalent.
sad.
It's frustrating.
Yeah,
too.
it is. It is.
Well, not only is it frustrating and sad, can you imagine being a businessman today who only has access to dial-up? You can't run a business that way.
No.
How
can't
can
do
you
it.
educate your children that way
Right.
if all they have is access to dial-up? So one of the projects I want to do locally that we can do now and create jobs now and opportunities now is to bring high-speed internet to the rural parts of this district.
Mhm.
Now, there's government programs to do that, but no one's brought those home to this district.
Yeah, yeah. We fight it here in our studio. We actually had to bring in T1s because we had no other alternative. That's the only thing we could do, and of course, it's very expensive. And if it
Yeah.
wasn't for the business sake, because we have the business going, couldn't afford it.
Couldn't afford it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a problem that we have throughout this district.
Right.
It's a really rugged district.
It is.
Mountains and foothills. You don't have line of sight communication.
Yeah,
in most places.
wireless internet is tough. We have a couple of companies trying it out, but you still have such latency involved with it.
Yeah.
And as old guy tech, I could get into the tech side of it, but we're really here for you more than that. But there are definitely some challenges trying to bring high speed into El Dorado County and some of the other rural counties as well. And there are some solutions, but they cost money.
They do.
You know?
I was talking about this in Georgetown, actually in Garden Valley a few weeks ago. And it was funny, most times when I talk about bringing high-speed internet, I get people, somewhat happy with the idea. In Garden Valley, the whole room erupted in applause because that's a huge problem up there. And they were telling me, Jack, it's not just high-speed internet. We don't get cell phone coverage half the time.
Right.
So
Right.
we really do need to build up our infrastructure in this district.
That would help a lot.
It would help bring jobs right here at home, which is what we need to do.
Well, I find that if you can bring high speed into most people, you mentioned it. Education is available that way. There are plenty at home jobs that people can do. They can telecommute. Situation. There is so much that can be done with high speed internet that we're sadly missing here, and so it'd be really good to have that. So that's a great idea, and I'm all for it. And that's another one that we're going to keep working on. That's for sure.
It's really a question, Robert, of making sure that you don't view government as being an obstacle to things. If you see government as something that can partner with industry to bring good things to a community, if that's the approach that you have, then you can solve a lot of those problems. But if your approach is that all government is necessarily bad or not good for the community, well, then you're not really going to accomplish anything with government.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to take a more positive approach that, hey, look, let's do things with government and industry that help our communities locally.
So it's a balance, is what you're saying.
It's a balance.
Yeah.
You don't want government, I don't propose government taking over stuff. I'm not looking for government to own a whole lot of things and stuff, but I do see government having a role in defining some of these programs and bringing these benefits back to the people in this district.
So how did you feel about the government's investment into GM and Chrysler? What's your opinion on it? Was that the right thing to do? Was that
Absolutely was.
You thought so? Okay.
That's a huge industry. People don't understand that it's not just the cars, but it's all the parts manufacturers,
Yes.
all the infrastructure, the tire manufacturers. If we had let those industries go under, it would have decimated this country. You talk about loss of jobs, and I know that we're in a tough situation even today, but if we hadn't kept that auto industry going, it would have been so much worse.
Do you think it would have been worse in the long term, or do you think it would? I mean, obviously in the short term it would have been worse, but don't you believe that economically wise we would have probably come out of that stronger, maybe?
Possibly, but at what cost? If it took 20 years to regain some of our strength,
Right.
is it really worth waiting 20 years to have that resuscitation? I don't think so. It would have hurt so much that investing in other technology programs like the electric car thing
Right.
you mentioned wouldn't be possible.
You'd have to go on the
The
back
country
burner.
would be in so much trouble, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
If you cut back that much, you slowly start amputating parts of the government, and you can't afford the programs that are necessary to move ourselves forward again. You can't afford to take steps backward because it's so much harder to go forward again.
Do you believe that with the government stepping in and helping out with these companies, how's your feelings on the unions and some of the struggles that the unions have had with this situation?
You know, the union membership is down to, I think it's 8% of the American workforce is now unionized.
Okay.
It used to be up around 20%.
Right.
What the unions did for us was really admirable back in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. Unions were responsible for bringing about the 40-hour work week, the 5-day work week. They brought middle-class prosperity to a lot of working Americans.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That middle class, you know, our country has never been as strong as when the middle class is strong.
Right.
What we're seeing today with the loss of union representation for a lot of people is you're seeing employers and corporations taking advantage of workers, where they'll take a worker, maybe fire them or lay them off, and rehire them as contract workers, which means they can pay lower wages, they can take away benefits. And what happens as a result of that? It may sound like a great deal for the companies, but it's not a great deal for us. What happens when a company decides that they're going to pay their workers minimum wage with no benefits and nothing else? What happens is that person, if they're supporting a family with that kind of a job, is often going to need some other assistance, like food stamp assistance or other programs. Who pays for that? We pay for that. We pay for that in our taxes. So in essence, what happens is instead of the companies supporting that employee with reasonable wages and benefits, they foist that responsibility onto government, because we're not a society that's just going to abandon those people. That's not the country that we are. If they're going to be needing medical help or they're going to be needing food assistance, we are going to provide that from our government. And then we complain about, hey, what about all these people that are using our systems for their own sustenance? Well, a lot of it comes from companies. We're essentially subsidizing those companies and the labor at those companies. I don't think that we need to subsidize labor for the largest companies in the world. And that's what we're essentially doing.
Yes, but at the same time, my opinion is that I see a lot of projects that could move forward that are being held up because the unions are protecting their turf, so to speak. Mm-hmm. During the Depression and with WPA and some of the other programs were brought up, that couldn't happen today because the unions wouldn't allow it. They're protecting their turf. Mm-hmm. So I see the union situation as somewhat a hindrance to the ability of the workers and for us to grow more. So I think it's a balancing act. I grew up in a union family. I know exactly the middle class dream. Okay, my dad was an electrician, worked in the union. I understand it 100%, and it was absolutely the right thing to do at the time. So my question is, have we grown beyond what that model was, and is not the union model a different situation now? When you are talking about benefits as a worker situation, well, many companies offer them. Smaller companies can't because we can't afford it, and that's a difficult situation. Yes, we need affordable medical care somehow, some way. Personally, I don't see how anybody has read the whole Obamacare situation that's out there right now. It's so convoluted, it's unbelievable. Do we need something like that? Do we need to look at it? I mean, what's your feeling on Obamacare? Did you think it was the right thing, or what?
Let's talk about, you mentioned two things there. So
okay.
One is back to the union question.
Okay.
And then I'll talk about Obamacare. On the union, I'm not saying that unions are perfect today. Yes, they've got some challenges, and they've certainly had some difficulties in the recent past where they're protecting their own jobs and protecting their own workers that way. There have been some excesses. I think the unions are recognizing those, and they're changing those. Look, if you take the attitude that if something is imperfect, we should just get rid of it, you're not going to have much left, because there's not too many perfect things in this world.
Right.
So the question is, are you going to try to modify it and improve on it, or are you just going to try to get rid of it altogether. I don't think unions are in such a bad state that we need to get rid of them at all. I think there are things that we can do to improve the unions and make them more cooperative and easier to work with. But I'm not ready to abandon them altogether. I think they can still provide a lot of help, especially with this economy we've got now. I can see that they can provide a lot of help for workers getting reasonable living wages and benefits that we need. Now, when it comes to health care, we've got 50 million people in this country that don't have access to health care.
Right.
They don't have it in most cases because they can't afford it.
Right.
We need to do something about that. The system as we had it is not acceptable. A lot of people that even had health care would lose it when they got sick. They would find that there were pre-existing conditions that weren't disclosed or on the form when they first applied. People with pre-existing conditions cannot get insurance. Children with pre-existing conditions could not get insurance.
Sure.
Those were all the evils that we had. Obamacare, again, is it a perfect institution? No, I don't expect that it is. Is it going to need some changes? Yeah, for sure. But it's going to do a few things which I think are really worthwhile, and that's why I support it overall. It's going to take 30 million people right away and give them health insurance that have never had health insurance before. Is that going to cost us money? Not really, because what's been happening so far is those 30 million people, if they needed health care, what did they do? They go to the emergency rooms when they are sick. Who pays for that? They didn't pay for that. We pay for it. We pay for it through higher insurance premiums, and we pay it through our government programs to help them as well. This is a way that we can provide preventative care for those people. It's going to allow children. Now, even today, children cannot be denied health insurance for pre-existing conditions.
Right.
I've met people in this district, Robert, who have told me that their mother, their relative, would not be alive today if the Affordable Care Act hadn't been passed. And what they tell me is, Jack, my mother was so ill that her lifetime maximum was being reached, and there's no way we could have afforded that health care for her. She would not be alive except for Obamacare removing those lifetime caps. Those are the reasons that I see that we have to implement some kind of medical care reform. Obamacare may not be perfect. There may be things that we'll have to do. Hey, we're still modifying Social Security and welfare after many years. Right. So I'm sure we'll be modifying it, but it's a great starting point.
I agree with hesitation. We're in a situation, too, where one of my kids can't get health insurance. He was let go off of his job. He lost it, went through COBRA, and there's just no way to get any health insurance at this point. So, yes. And the pre-existing condition situation, I agree 100% with you. Yep. That's important. What bothers me about Obamacare is how it was kind of, I want to say, rammed down the throats of the Americans. When you have Nancy Pelosi standing up there and saying, we have to pass this so that we know what's in it. I mean, I was dumbfounded. I'm still dumbfounded to this day in a statement like that.
Yeah, look, I'm not thrilled with all of the things that happened. I don't like the fact that only Democrats voted for the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
I think it should have enjoyed more bipartisan support than that.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. And you can be critical, and rightfully so, of the process that we went through to implement the Affordable Care Act. But if you look at the act itself, and look at what's in the legislation and what is it going to do. People call it a government takeover of health care. That's the furthest thing from the truth. Government is not going to be providing this health care. Your insurance companies are. All it's doing is setting up exchanges for people to go and buy health insurance from the same insurance companies that are offering it today.
Sure.
So I tell you honestly, I have never seen as many lies about what's in the Affordable Care Act. That program has the most lies of any program I've ever seen. People somehow are under so many misconceptions about what's in that program. Just not appropriate. If you look at the facts.
It's so hard to read this thing. I mean, I sat down and tried to read it and make sense of it, too. It's just overly complicated, overly wordy. And, it could have been so much simpler, and you might have gotten more support. But when you look at it, you kind of go, they've stuck so many other writers involved with it
Yeah.
too. And there's the other problem that we have with legislation. How do we've beat the medical thing to death a little bit here, but what's your opinion on bill passage and the padding that happens with, the pork, so to speak, that gets added onto these? So what's your opinion on that?
That's a great question. Let me finish one thing on the
Okay,
healthcare thing. One thing I can suggest, because the legislation is very complicated, I absolutely agree with you. It's hard to know everything that's in there. Go to some nonpartisan, and I've really struggled to find, hey, where can I go on the web to find nonpartisan information about what is in the plan?
Right.
One of the places I can suggest is I think it's the Kaiser Family Foundation. It's nonpartisan. They have a very extensive list of all of what's in the plan and what's not. It's not put together by either the Obama administration, and it's not put together by other political groups. It's put together by a nonprofit health foundation.
Mm-hmm.
That's one source. There's other sources in like the Washington Post and other reputable newspapers. That's where I would recommend people to go to get more factual information about, hey, just what's in the plan.
Right.
itself.
And I think that's important.
Yeah. Now, about these bills and the things that get added onto the bills, it's a sad tale. Who writes the bills that go through our Congress today? They're not written by the congressmen.
Right.
They're not written by their staff. They're written by the lobbyists.
Right.
So if you ask me, what's the problem with the bills getting that complicated and with so many nuances to them, most of which are not really benefiting the American people, it's because of the influence of lobbyists and moneyed interests in our Congress today. That's the underlying problem for so many of our problems.
Right. I think that's a definite problem. Okay, let's step back a little bit. When you talk about lobbyists and the bills being written by the lobbyists, what's your feeling on term limits?
In Congress?
Yes.
We have term limits in Congress. It's every 2 years. They're up for election. I'm not so sure that I'm in favor of term limits for Congress. I am in favor of taking the money out of the system. Right now, a congressional campaign, not mine, mind you, but a congressional campaign, people raise in excess of $2 or $3 million.
Sure, absolutely.
For that.
Right.
You can't raise $2 or $3 million when you're representing 700,000 people. People don't have that much money available. To finance. So where's the money coming from? It's coming from all these other sources. I don't think the solution is necessarily term limits. I think the solution is more take the extra money that's coming into the system out of the equation. Make it so that congressmen have to rely on people living in the district to raise whatever money that they need.
Right.
Or make it something that's more fair so that congressmen don't have to raise money for campaigns. We need campaign finance reform. If we do that, I don't think you need term limits. The disadvantage of term limits is if you get someone that's really good, and knowledgeable, working in Congress, do you really want to remove that
It's a
person?
two-edged sword. There's no doubt about
sword.
it. Same thing. If you got somebody that you don't like or isn't effective,
Yeah.
you're stuck with them as well. And that's why I asked that question, because I struggle with that myself.
I do too. Take a look at what we did in California.
Yeah.
We have term limits in our legislature.
Right.
How's that worked out for us?
Yeah. Well, and you see a lot of flip-flopping. You take that position, I'll take this position. It's and the redistricting was very interesting this time too in California. But that's for another day. That's another issue also. Hey, let's
Actually,
talk.
the redistricting that happened in our congressional district,
Yeah.
I think was a great thing that happened. What happened is this congressional district 4 that I'm running in was created to be a mountain and foothill district to represent the people that live in the foothill communities in California, in the Sierras. So when I say this district goes down to Fresno County, it doesn't include the city of Fresno. It's only the mountains and foothills.
Okay.
And so for the first time, you're seeing that instead of a congressman representing Fresno City and Fresno foothills and mountains, you've got a congressman that's representing foothill and mountain interests throughout the Sierra Nevada. I think that's cool. I think they're actually getting representation that they weren't really getting before. So at least that one I felt.
Well,
was a
that
good
part's
change.
good for the rural areas. Absolutely. I think that's a good thing. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about a little bit is elderly care. And how we move forward. We're all getting into that position. We're all getting older. What's your feeling on it, elderly care, and how do we deal with that?
Well, besides Medicare is one part of that. And
Right.
I can talk about Medicare and where it's going and where it should go. The other part of that people don't realize is a lot of the elderly care, when seniors go into nursing homes and so on, where does the money for that come from? Now, in some cases, people have their own insurance for nursing home care.
Sure.
But a lot of people don't.
Don't,
A lot of
right.
people can't afford that.
Right.
Where that money often comes from is Medicaid for seniors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Medicaid for seniors is one of the things that's on the chopping block, especially in things like the Ryan budget plan.
Right.
Medicaid in general gets cut by quite a lot, and that will directly impact the seniors that don't have the money to go into nursing homes, but that they need nursing home care. That's one of the problems that I have with the Ryan budget plan.
So do you think that we're going to have elders thrown out in the street? I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
That's the risk. If the money is cut for Medicaid, the money is not going to be there for those seniors. What's going to happen to those seniors? I don't know in that system. I think it's a shame that we cannot cut that kind of care. That's really important. There's no other option for those seniors. They don't necessarily have other family members that can take care of them. They don't have the money themselves. What's going to happen to them? It's scary.
That's why I'm asking. I have a family situation right now with that, and so I understand. It is scary.
It is absolutely
Yeah.
scary. I think it's irresponsible to cut that kind of aid when there really isn't an alternative for those people that are reliant on it. If we go back to Medicare itself, Medicare is right now solvent until the year 2024. The Affordable Care Act did a couple things that extended the life of Medicare by 8 years. It would have gone out of business, or it would have had insufficient funds starting in 2016. With that Affordable Care Act, and you've probably heard this magic $716 billion that
right.
Obama took out of Medicare. Well, what he did is he took out $716 billion of spending that was going to insurance companies, hospitals, providers. It was not going to the care of the seniors. So he basically cut back on the spending that was going to companies. That saved $716 billion, extended the life of Medicare by 8 years. Candidate Mitt Romney is now saying that he's going to repeal that. He's going to put those payments back into the system, and he's going to repeal Obamacare. If you do that, you basically drive the Medicare fund back to being insolvent in 2016. And I haven't heard an alternative of what's he going to do to extend Medicare. It's not until 2023 that it would actually go to a voucher system, but there's a real danger that it'll go out of business long before that if he puts back in that $716 billion in spending, which is not helping patient care. It's only helping the providers.
Well, I guess we'll find out. I mean, I'm still personally confused a bit on Obamacare and everything that's in it. It's very difficult to read.
Very difficult to read.
It really is. So,
you know, one of the toughest things that you do when you've never been in politics before and you decide to run for Congress is really taking a look at a lot of these bills and trying to go through the nuances, because you'll find all kinds of information. Some will be skewed in this direction, some will be skewed in that direction.
Right.
And what I've tried to do is I try to actually read both of those. And then I try to look for some that's maybe somewhere in between. And then I try to make up my mind of, hey, what's really in there? Sometimes you have to go back in and read the bill itself.
Yeah.
And that's not always easy either.
It's not. It's
but
difficult. Right.
That's what you have to do
Yeah.
if you really want to, be able to make a decision on these things.
So, do you believe, or why do you believe Obamacare was as large and the bill was so much thrown together for you? Why do you think that happened? Why couldn't we?
Complicated system.
Yeah, I mean, you would think we could have made it simpler, that everybody could have understood it.
Possibly. We could have scaled it back to something that wasn't as grand as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're talking about doing major healthcare reform, it's a grand change. It's a big change. It's like introducing a system like Medicare. When Medicare was first started in 1965, that was a big change. And it's not easy to implement a big change like that without having a very complicated bill, because you have to cover so many things. You have to cover providing these health exchanges and so on. There's a lot to actually set up in a bill. That's why it's so big and complicated. And you're right, the other part of it is who gets involved in writing it. Well, unfortunately, everyone that has a hand in writing it is trying to carve little things into it that benefit them.
You know, I had the opportunity to sit on a number of commissions. I was on the El Dorado County Transportation Commission for a long time, and looking at the bills and the monies that came to us for road improvement and that type of thing. I mean, it literally took days to get through some of this stuff and try to figure out why. And then you look at things like Obamacare, and it's, I don't know how many thousands of pages, but I'm a true believer in the KISS principle. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, and so that's what bothers me a little bit about that bill. So that one's going to be, who knows, you know, where that one's going to go.
Yeah.
Let's switch topics a little bit on this one. Let's talk about same-sex marriage. And what's your opinion on that?
Well, you heard my background. I grew up in the 1960s and 70s in this country. One thing that I learned in the 1960s and 70s, I'll tell you, when I was in 6th grade in 1964, I had a phonograph record, vinyl, of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. I used to come home from school. I lived right across the street from the school in Minneapolis. I used to come home and listen to that speech every day at lunchtime. And I was struck by the beauty of the words, the way that he expressed them, and the sentiment of what it is that he was trying to promote. I am a big believer in civil rights, equal rights for all people. The whole issue of same-sex marriage, to me, is a question of treating people the same, giving everyone equal benefit from our society. I don't see that denying same-sex marriage. I see denying same-sex marriage as equivalent to denying or recognizing the validity of those people, of gays, to actually marry other gays. I don't believe in that. I believe that they should have the right to marry. They should have the same rights as anyone else. And I think it's disrespecting them by denying them those kinds of rights, which I'm not in favor of.
Right, and that includes partnership as far as the medical, you know, that one partner may have for the other, and so all the way down, you believe.
Yeah, there are so many advantages and benefits that accrue through marriage that are not available to gays today.
Sure, right.
There's no reason why they should be denied those benefits. They're people. They're equal members of our society.
Right.
And so, just as a civil rights issue, I strongly believe that they should have the right to enjoy the same benefits as the rest of our members in our society.
Okay, well, that's good. Good. Let's talk about taxes a little bit. What's your philosophy on taxes, and how do you feel about we have both the Republican and the Democrats' points of view as far as taxation goes. What's your opinion?
I believe that taxation is something that needs to be fairly spread to everyone. Now, defining what fair is the challenge, and that's where the differences come between Democrats and Republicans. You know, I'm a Democrat. I'm also a Republican because I'm a moderate. I'm not I don't think that good ideas just come from one place. Both sides have a point. Both sides also make exaggerations, if you will, on what's fair. I believe if everyone has a fair share and a fair stake in the system, that's fair. Let me give you one example of what I feel about taxation, and it's one that's maybe a little bit less known than a lot of other things, okay? Because I'm going to talk about corporate taxes,
Okay.
which is a complicated subject.
Right.
Corporate taxes, the system that we have today is that if corporations earn income overseas, it only gets taxed in this country when those profits come back into this country. As long as the profits remain offshore, they don't get taxed.
Right.
As a result, we've got a whole lot of corporations that are keeping profits from overseas offshore.
Right.
They're hoping that someday that law will change and then they can bring that money back here. Well, okay, we need to do something about that because that's not the right thing. We
Right.
don't want to encourage that. There's two proposals out there, okay, and I won't say which is which, but I'll let you judge for yourself. And I'll give you a simple example, and you can decide what you think is fair. Suppose you have a corporation, multinational big company corporation, that manufactures their products here in this country, sell some in this country, sell some abroad, and now they want to bring the profits back to this country. Okay, that's one situation. The second situation is you've got a second company that does not manufacture here. They do most of their manufacturing overseas. They sell some stuff here, they sell some stuff overseas, and they want to bring the profits back to this country. In both cases, the question is, how do you tax those two companies?
Right.
What's fair? Do you tax them equally? Do you not tax either one? Do you tax them both the same, and tax them, at a corporate rate, or what? That's a question.
Sure.
What do you think?
Yeah. Well, for me, it would take a lot more study to understand the situation. I believe that many of our corporations are not necessarily good citizens.
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself kind of a libertarian. I'm a constitutionalist. I believe in the Constitution. But I believe that my opinion, and it's not worth anything because I'm not running, but my opinion is I'm disappointed in some of the corporations going overseas to produce and manufacture and outsource everything. We could have an awful lot of people hired in this country if we could just keep the jobs here.
See, now I totally agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
So in those two cases, my take is that the company that's building their product here, they're doing several things that are real positive for this country. They're employing people here, they're manufacturing here, they're selling overseas, so they're reducing our trade imbalance.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. If that company wants to bring profits back to this country, I'd be okay with having a much reduced tax rate for them, if any.
Sure.
I'd even be okay with maybe having a zero tax rate for them bringing profits back home. But the second company that's really just doing everything overseas and they want to bring profits back here, they're not invested in this country at all.
Right. Right.
Do I want to tax their money coming back?
Yes.
You bet.
Yeah.
Now, what's the Democrat and Republican approach? Okay, I can tell you what's in the Paul Ryan budget plan because it addresses this question.
Okay.
That Paul Ryan budget plan says, in all cases, bring that money back, no taxes. I don't think that's fair. That's just going to encourage more corporations to outsource our jobs and build stuff overseas. That's not the approach that I would take. I would take a hybrid approach. It needs to consider how much are those corporations investing in this country. You're absolutely right when you say that some of our companies and corporations are not good citizens. I heard a term the other day called economic patriotism.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have economic patriotism amongst our corporations.
Yeah.
And outsourcing jobs is not being patriotic to this country. And if you're going to do that, I think taxation is one way that we can recoup some of that unpatriotic behavior on those companies.
Yeah, there's a lot of big, major corporations that were started here in this country.
Mm-hmm.
They were founded here, and they grew large because they prospered here.
Mm-hmm.
They put people to work here. People that worked for the companies were loyal,
Yep.
and to be basically cast aside to save 2 cents on a part bothers me.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do I believe in free enterprise in our economic system? I do.
Of course.
And obviously they have the right to do that. But I think economic patriotism is a perfect statement. I would certainly like to see a lot of the companies bring it back. And we're finding in some cases that they're learning that they weren't best served by outsourcing for a number of reasons. May it be logistics, may it be language, may it be whatever it was. And I think some of them are learning and some of them are coming back. And we do need to figure out how to make incentives so that they will bring these jobs back. I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
I think there's numerous approaches that we need to take on that.
Very complicated subject.
Very.
But it's a really important one because it affects a lot of American jobs.
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah. Well, I saved this question for last, and you may have seen some of my other interviews, and you may know where I'm going or I'm not going. Like I said, I'm a constitutionalist. I believe in our constitutional rights to keep and own and bear arms. Mm-hmm. I'm a true gun owner, a proud American. Mm-hmm. What's your position on the Second Amendment?
First of all, I too believe in the Constitution, including the Second Amendment mm-hmm. and all the amendments to the Constitution. I do believe in the right of Americans to bear arms for several reasons. I mean, a lot of people keep handguns for their own protection. A lot of keep guns for sport, for hunting and stuff. Absolutely in favor of that. Where I have a little concern is I do have a concern with automatic weapons. We just had another shooting happen this past week. I do have a concern with automatic weapons and with magazines that contain a whole lot of ammunition. It's hard to conceive of any sport opportunities, and it's not real. And there might be some exceptional cases where people need those kinds of weapons for their own self-protection, but Uzis and other automatic weapons, those are not really that useful. Those are not positive things. But in most cases, yes, I favor.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And I think that with a little education, I might be able to turn your opinion around a little bit. When you say automatic weapons, the fact is that the shootings have taken place, unfortunately, from very ill individuals.
Yes, agreed.
Because the normal person wouldn't. They actually weren't using automatic weapons. Are you aware of the difference between a semi-automatic weapon and a full automatic weapon? Yeah, these are all semi-automatics. These are all basically the same functioning guns as we use for target shooting, we use for hunting or whatever. They just look different. The basic manufacturer of that gun is just the same. It's the same principle. So, you're against full automatic weapons, and in this country, for full automatic weapons, we have a huge licensing situation that you have to go through. It's not an easy thing that anybody can do, and many states don't allow it, such as California anyway. My opinion is that criminals don't follow laws anyway. Okay? I think we need to the laws that are already on the books, we need to enforce. I don't believe we need more laws to it. I think the situation is easily containable by just enforcing the laws that we have now. And I think with a little education, that the people that are vehemently against ownership of handguns or ownership of rifles or ownership of a firearm in general, with some education, we can let them know that there is a difference and understand that, that people that shoot for sport, they take it seriously and it's a lot of fun. And also they want to be able to protect themselves, because the reality is law enforcement generally is there to clean up afterwards.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. For protecting yourself and for sport, I absolutely do favor allowing people to own guns and rifles and so on. I think we just need to be a little bit more careful with some of the weapons that can do a lot more damage. And that's really where the concern comes in. Well, and exactly how we word that and how we do something like that, it's not simple.
Well, it's, all you have to do is look at some of these anti-gun bills that are passed down every year, and you'll see the wordage, the verbiage that's in it, and it's just atrocious. And the fact is, for me, the way I look at it, it's lack of education on the person's part that's writing these bills. Yeah. They really don't understand it. I'm going to give you an example. They're trying to pass a bill on ammunition. Okay, so they've decided that they're beating a dead horse on the guns because the Second Amendment's fairly strong. And right now, I think the Supreme Court is going to continue to support the Hiller decision and show that the individuals have a right to own firearms. So they said, okay, well, but that doesn't cover ammunition. So let's go into another direction. Let's go into ammunition. So they're using this 1,000-round number as if you buy more than 1,000 rounds, you're going to be reported to the local law enforcement.
No, I don't favor that.
Yeah, well, good, because as a sport shooter, I shoot trap. Okay, I'm a trap shooter. And any given weekend, I'll shoot 1,500 to 2,000 rounds of trap. Yeah. That doesn't make me a crazy person. It doesn't make me a wacko.
It's even worse than that, because I know a lot of people will buy ammunition in bulk to save some money.
Absolutely.
So I don't favor limiting the amount of ammunition that you can buy. I'm concerned about single magazines or clips that can shoot off 100 rounds without even
Yeah.
reloading. That's where I have
Yeah.
a
Well, first of all, there's very few guns that can do that.
Right.
Okay. The average number for most of these guns are 30-round magazines. Okay.
Right.
California has a 10-round magazine ban. All it really does is it makes the person carry more magazines.
That's right.
It doesn't really solve anything. And it's a feel-good law, not an actual logical law, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
So I understand where you're coming from, but when you really break it down and you look at it, it too doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, the only saving grace of that is if a shooter that is deranged and is doing this kind of thing has to change magazines and
Yeah.
stuff in between. Hey, it gives people at least a little bit of protection, a
Well,
little bit of time.
you hope, you know.
There isn't a whole lot you can do. You're
Right.
absolutely right. The problem is that we get people that are mentally ill
Right.
that are doing these things.
Exactly.
And how do you really protect society against people going mentally
Yeah.
ill? That's a different problem.
It's difficult. It's difficult because now you have another area. You know, we've got our HIPAA and our medical rules.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned that somewhere down the line they're going to a point where, okay, now if you want to own a gun, we have to look at your medical history. Have you seen a psychiatrist? Do you take antidepressant medicines? Do you do XYZ, whatever it is? Now they're really intruding upon your right. And I'm really nervous that that's going to be the next step.
And to tell you the truth, I hate to say this, but through legislation, you're never going to eliminate those kinds of things happening altogether.
No.
I don't care if you ban every gun. You're absolutely right. There's nothing you can do to absolutely prevent those things. All that people are looking at, hey, are there small measures that we can take that might help a little bit? But there is no way that these measures are going to completely protect us from someone that basically gets ill and
Yes.
decides to take
Yes.
it out on society.
Yeah, it's impossible.
It is
And like I said, I truly believe that there's plenty of legislation right now as it is. There's so many laws on the books that are difficult to enforce as it is. And I realize that when you get into office, one of the things that many people want to do is produce bills. They want to show that they're writing. It's almost like when you're in academia, you know, you need to publish or die,
papers.
right? So seems to be the same case. And I really believe there's plenty of laws out there. Let's just enforce what we have. And yes, you're never going to protect from the crazy people. They're just crazy. And that, you know, what do you do? I have an opinion that, and it may be wrong, I don't know, but my opinion is that if there had been people, let's take this theater shooting just recently. The confusion that was made between the whole thing, that took place. The guy, for being very ill, was also extremely smart. He knew that he was taking advantage of what was going on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so many people thought it was a show in the beginning. But what if we had some people that have the ability to carry a firearm legally, a concealed weapons permit, that they legally carry those firearms? What's your feeling on that?
I don't think it would have produced a great result. You got to remember, this is a darkened theater. You've got a person that's well armed, and you're talking about maybe there's one or two people that are in the theater that might have a concealed weapon. I think there's a good chance that they might have caused more damage than was good. Too.
Well, I understand your position. I disagree with it. I personally believe in that situation that it might have been able to help more people get away, and I'm going to show in a great example of the city of New York City, probably one of the most difficult places to own a firearm in the country. We had a shooting situation here that is just so sad, where 9 individuals were injured by law enforcement officers trying to stop one individual who was shooting.
Yeah.
You know where that comes from? They handicapped their own law enforcement officers so badly on the ownership of firearms, even for law enforcement officers, that they don't qualify regularly. They've increased the trigger pull situation so bad that they can't be accurate. It's an example of poor government trying to control everyone's life, and even the people that are supposed to protect you, they don't want to have firearms. So.
I haven't seen the details on that.
Yeah.
From the way you're describing it, though, I agree. I don't want to limit the police officers
Yeah.
from having I mean, I'm counting on them to be able to
Yeah,
protect us.
absolutely. And,
So I
and
wouldn't
here
wanna
you
lose
you
them at
have
all.
it. They were even hamstringing their own individuals here, so it was a sad thing. But anyway, I'm a strong proponent in Second Amendment. Sounds like you believe in it to a certain degree, and that's good to know. That's really great. And we spent a lot of time, and boy, we covered a lot of area, Jack. And I really, really appreciate you coming and spending the time with us.
I loved it. Have we really spent a whole lot of time?
Yeah,
It doesn't
almost
feel
an
it to
hour.
me.
Can you believe it? It goes by real fast. And you've been just great and tremendous, and I want to thank you very much. So once again, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. You did a great job. And for all of you out there, thanks for watching Old Guy Tech TV and News 44. And, we'll keep an eye on Jack. You can always get to his website, as you see behind us. And, I always tell everybody who runs for office that it's an incredible job. A lot of effort. I give you a lot of credit for doing it. Thank you very much for taking the time and running for office. And, hey, this is Rob, Old Guy Tech TV. We'll see you soon. This episode of Old Guy Tech TV is brought to you by Ward's Automotive, specializing in Banks Power and Pack Brake, servicing your car or truck and specializing in diesel engines. Over 30 years of service, located in Diamond Springs, California. Give them a call at 530-626-5588.